Have you ever felt invisible to the people who should matter most? My name is Emily, and I spent 32 years waiting for my family to see me. Last October, I shared the biggest achievement of my career with them. My father's response? He laughed and dismissed it as just another lowly teacher's award. My sister claimed she had dinner plans she couldn't break. My mother said nothing. She simply liked my sister's message and scrolled away. That night, I stared at my phone for what felt like hours. Then I typed back 3 simple words. That's fine. But what none of them could have predicted was that 48 hours later, my father would be sitting in a restaurant when his face would go completely pale. Because there on his screen, broadcast live to millions, was me. Before I continue, if this story is hitting something deep inside you, please like and subscribe. But only if you genuinely feel connected. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from right now. Let me take you back 3 weeks to the moment everything changed. The autumn sun was setting over Jefferson Middle School when I finished cleaning the last whiteboard. Room 214 had been my sanctuary for 8 years. My walls were covered with thank you cards from students, handwritten notes in crayon, marker, and pencil from kids who'd never written a letter before they met me. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. She told me my sister Victoria had won a major pharmaceutical case. She sounded so proud. I congratulated her genuinely. Mom mentioned they were planning a celebration dinner, that my father was already calling people to invite them. Then, mid-sentence, she cut me off. She had to call Victoria back. The line went dead. On my desk sat something I'd been carrying for 2 days. An unopened envelope with thick cream paper and an official seal from the Department of Education. Inside was an invitation that most teachers never receive in their entire careers. I was one of 4 finalists in the entire country for the National Teacher of the Year Award. The ceremony would be in Washington, D.C. The Secretary of Education would present it. It would be broadcast live on C-SPAN. I looked at those thank you cards covering my wall. At least someone thought I mattered. This wasn't the first time my family had made me feel small. 3 years ago at my master's graduation, my parents arrived 2 hours late. The next morning, I overheard my mother bragging to my aunt about making it to my sister's bar association dinner instead, about how stunning Victoria looked accepting her award. They'd left my ceremony early without telling me. On my 30th birthday, no one called. Not my father, not my mother, not Victoria. 3 days later, my mom texted asking if my birthday had been the previous week, saying time flies. We never did have that lunch. Last Christmas, when Victoria announced her promotion, my father opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving for 15 years. When I mentioned my students had raised money for new library books, he nodded absently and asked Victoria about her bonus. I'd learned to stop expecting anything from them. But this letter felt different. Someone, a distinguished educator whose name would stay secret until the ceremony, had believed in me enough to submit my name for the highest honor in American education. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe the official seal, the letterhead, the words Washington, D.C. and Secretary of Education would finally make them understand. I opened the family group chat and started typing. But I rewrote that message 11 times. The first drafts were either too desperate or too casual. By the 11th version, I'd stripped it down to just the facts. I'd been selected as a finalist. The ceremony was October 15th in Washington. It would mean a lot if they could be there. I attached the official invitation and sent it. Then I waited. I made dinner, checked my phone, graded papers, checked my phone. By midnight, all 3 of them had read the message. No response. I fell asleep with my phone on my pillow. At 7:42 the next morning, I woke to a notification. My heart jumped. My father was typing. The dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. His message came through. Just a lowly teacher's award. I'm not flying to Washington for that. Before I could even process those words, Victoria responded that she and her husband had dinner plans that night and couldn't cancel. She added a smiley face emoji. I waited for my mother to say something. Anything. Instead, I saw a small notification. Diane Carter liked Victoria's message. No words, no congratulations. Just a thumbs up on my sister's rejection. The familiar ache settled back into my chest, the one I'd carried since I was 12, watching my father hang Victoria's report card on the refrigerator while mine went straight into a drawer. I typed back 4 words. That's fine. No worries. I didn't cry. I'd stopped crying about my family years ago. Instead, something harder settled inside me. A resolve. I would go to Washington alone. I would sit in that audience by myself. And whether I won or lost, I would know I'd earned my place there. That evening, my father was sitting in a restaurant when everything changed. He didn't know it yet, but his entire perception of his daughter was about to shift in ways he could never undo. I was in Washington, preparing backstage, completely unaware that my sister was dismissing my achievement over lunch in Philadelphia. Victoria was telling her colleagues that I was just another teacher getting a participation trophy, that if I had real ambition, I wouldn't have settled for a modest salary. She had no idea that one of those women at her table, Joanna Price, used to be an education reporter and was silently taking notes on every condescending word she said. My family arrived at an upscale French restaurant that evening, completely certain my ceremony was some small, forgettable event. My father raised his glass to Victoria's partnership. My mother laughed about how they were celebrating real achievement. They mocked what they assumed was my little thing happening somewhere far away. Mark, Victoria's husband, looked uncomfortable but stayed silent when my sister dismissed me. My mother suggested sending flowers out of guilt, but Victoria brushed it off, saying teachers get these awards constantly, that it meant nothing. Meanwhile, the grand ballroom of the Kennedy Center was being transformed. 2,000 people were taking their seats. Cameras were positioned at every angle. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across round tables draped in white. The Secretary of Education was preparing to speak. Behind the curtain, I was trying to steady my breathing. Grandma Martha sat in the front row, her eyes already glistening. She'd arranged something I didn't fully understand yet. My phone buzzed, a text from her. "I'm so proud of you. Your parents will soon see what I've always known. The whole country is about to meet the Emily I love. The whole country." C-SPAN was broadcasting live. CNN had cameras rolling. Education journalists from every major outlet were taking notes. The Secretary of Education approached the podium. He spoke about teachers who go beyond the curriculum, who see potential where others see problems, who change lives one student at a time. I closed my eyes and breathed. Whatever happened next, I had earned my place here. Not because of my family's approval or their money or status, because I showed up every day for my students when no one else did. My name was called. I stepped into the spotlight. The secretary paused before announcing the results. He said each finalist would hear from a former student whose life they'd touched. He asked the audience to welcome Marcus Thompson. My heart stopped. Marcus. Little Marcus Thompson, who used to sit in the back of my classroom with holes in his shoes, who wrote assignments on napkins because he couldn't afford notebooks, who once told me he'd probably be dead by 20. But the man walking to the microphone wasn't little anymore. Marcus Thompson stood 6 feet tall in a perfectly tailored suit. A Johns Hopkins ID badge hung from his pocket. He was a second-year resident in pediatric surgery. When I was 16, Marcus began, his voice steady and clear. I was homeless. My mother was in prison. I was sleeping in my car. The audience fell completely silent. I'd given up on everything: school, life, myself. Then I walked into Miss Carter's English class. He looked directly at me. She noticed things, that I was always hungry, that I wore the same clothes every day, that I flinched when people moved too fast. His voice cracked slightly. She never announced it. She never made me feel like a charity case. She just helped. Tears were building in my eyes. She bought me food. She drove me to scholarship interviews. She stayed after school for hours, helping me with my work, believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. When I got into Johns Hopkins, Marcus continued, Miss Carter was the first person I called. Not because she was my teacher, but because she was the first adult who ever believed I could be something more. He wiped his eyes. Miss Carter didn't save my life with grand gestures. She saved it with small acts of kindness every single day. I'm a doctor today because of her. The audience rose to their feet. 2,000 people standing, applauding, their ovation filling the entire ballroom. The applause seemed to go on forever. When it finally faded, the Secretary of Education returned to the podium holding a cream envelope. He spoke about how the committee had reviewed hundreds of nominations from across the country, how the 4 finalists represented the absolute best of American education, but only one could receive the highest honor. I couldn't breathe. Beside me, Priya gripped my hand so tightly it hurt. Michael closed his eyes. David whispered what sounded like a prayer. The secretary broke the seal and opened the envelope. The room held its breath. 2,000 people in complete silence. The 2024 National Teacher of the Year, he announced, is Emily Carter from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The room erupted. I couldn't move. Couldn't process what had just happened. Priya had to physically push me forward. "Go!" She laughed through tears. The walk to that stage felt like a dream. Lights blurred, applause thundered, faces smiled. 2,000 strangers on their feet celebrating a teacher from an underfunded middle school who'd simply refused to give up on her students. The secretary shook my hand. Cameras flashed. In the crowd, I spotted Marcus. He was crying openly, clapping so hard his hands must have hurt. Our eyes met and he mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." No, I thought. Thank you for becoming proof that what I do matters. Someone handed me a crystal trophy so beautiful I was afraid to hold it. "Your grandmother is a force of nature." The secretary leaned close and whispered. "She's been telling everyone you'd win for months." I looked out at the audience and found Grandma Martha in the front row. She was sobbing, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. I'd never seen her cry before. At the bottom of the screen, a CNN notification appeared. Breaking. Philadelphia teacher Emily Carter named National Teacher of the Year, nominated by legendary educator Martha Reynolds. Millions of Americans saw that headline. 3 people in a French restaurant in Philadelphia, who'd just ordered dessert, were about to see it too. My father reached for his phone. He had a habit of checking stocks, scrolling news, staying connected to the world he thought mattered. A CNN alert sat at the top of his screen. He almost scrolled past it. Philadelphia had thousands of teachers. What were the odds? Then he saw the photo. The image showed a woman on stage shaking hands with the Secretary of Education. Behind them, an enormous screen displayed the words, National Teacher of the Year 2024. The woman was his daughter. His hand froze. My mother noticed his expression. "What is it? Bad news from the market?" He couldn't speak. He held out the phone with a trembling hand. She took it, squinted at the screen. Her face went pale. "That's Emily." My sister grabbed the phone. Her wine glass tipped over. Red liquid spread across the white tablecloth. No, that can't be. She said it was just a small ceremony." My father whispered, "The Secretary of Education. She's shaking hands with the Secretary of Education." Mark leaned over to look. His expression was unreadable. "That's CNN's camera," he said quietly. "This is being broadcast nationally." My sister scrolled frantically through more photos. Emily at the podium. Emily receiving a crystal trophy. Emily surrounded by applauding dignitaries. And then the video played. The young man at the microphone with tears streaming down his face. Ms. Carter didn't save my life with big gestures. She saved it with small acts of kindness every single day. "Oh my God," my sister's voice was barely audible. This is actually a big deal." The worst was reserved for my sister. Text messages flooded in from colleagues, law school friends, people she barely remembered. "Why weren't you at the ceremony? Everything okay?" She mentioned someone who believed in her. "That's you, right?" My sister stared at that last message. The lie would have been so easy. Yes, of course. I'm her biggest supporter. But people had seen the broadcast. They'd heard me thank my grandmother and only my grandmother. A woman approached their table, kind face, napkin in hand. "Excuse me," I couldn't help but notice. "Are you Emily Carter's family? You must be so proud." My father attempted a smile. Yes, very proud. The woman frowned. Wait, why aren't you at the ceremony? Washington's not that far? My mother fumbled. There weren't any flights. The woman's expression changed from warmth to understanding, to judgment, to pity. Oh, she said quietly. I see. She walked away without another word. My sister excused herself to the restroom. She needed to control this, contain it, spin it. Her fingers flew across her phone screen. So proud of my amazing little sister, Emily. Wish we could have been there tonight. Family always comes first. She posted a screenshot from the broadcast with hashtags and a filter. Within seconds, comments appeared. Congratulations to your sister. Teachers are heroes. So sweet that you're supporting her. Then a new comment appeared. Joanna Price, the lawyer from lunch. The one my sister had forgotten used to be a journalist. Funny. At lunch today, you called it just a teacher appreciation thing and said teaching wasn't a real career. What changed? My sister's blood ran cold. More comments flooded in. Joanna replied with the exact words my sister had spoken at that table. 3 other women from that lunch liked the comment. One added, "Can confirm it was uncomfortable to witness." The post exploded. My sister deleted it, but screenshots had already been taken. Someone had already shared it to Twitter. Someone else was creating a TikTok. Her phone buzzed. A text from a senior partner. Victoria, heads up. Some clients are asking about the social media situation with your sister. The education nonprofit we represent saw the post. You might want to get ahead of this. The education nonprofit was the firm's biggest client, the case she'd been assigned to lead. Her hands shook. She tried calling me. Voicemail. Tried again. Voicemail. Mark texted her. Maybe you should come back to the table. People are staring. My hotel room was quiet. The ceremony had ended hours ago. The champagne reception, the photographs, the endless handshakes, all of it blurring together. Now it was nearly midnight, and I sat on the edge of my bed, my trophy on the nightstand, my phone face down on the comforter. I knew they were trying to reach me. 47 missed calls from my father, 23 from my mother, 15 from Victoria. I hadn't opened a single voicemail. I didn't want to hear their excuses, their explanations, their sudden pride now that the whole world was watching. A soft knock on my door. Grandma Martha stood in the hallway wrapped in a hotel robe, her eyes still red from crying. May I come in? I stepped aside and she settled into the armchair by the window. For a long moment, we just sat in comfortable silence, looking out at the Washington Monument glowing against the night sky. Do you want to talk to them? She finally asked. I shook my head. Not tonight. That's your right, she said. Did you know this would happen, that they'd see it? She smiled softly. I knew the broadcast would reach them. What they chose to do with that information was always up to them. Emily, I didn't arrange tonight to punish your parents. I arranged it to honor you. What they're feeling right now, that's a consequence of their own choices. I felt tears threatening. I just wanted them to show up once. I know, sweetheart. Some people can only see value when the world points it out to them. That's their limitation, not yours. I leaned into her shoulder. For the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone else's validation. I already had mine. 1 week later, the fallout continued in ways I never expected. My father walked into his regular Tuesday golf game at a club where he'd been a member for 30 years. His friends knew him, respected him, or so he thought. Richard, one of them called out. How's our celebrity father doing? The others laughed. Not with him. At him. I heard you missed the ceremony because you were too busy, another said. Too busy doing what? Eating French food. My father's face reddened. That's not. We had a prior commitment. To celebrate your other daughter, another friend added. Meanwhile, Emily is shaking hands with cabinet members on national television. Hell of a prior commitment, Rich. My mother fared no better. At her book club that Thursday, the women who normally discussed novels spent the first 20 minutes discussing my speech instead. That line about finding people who believe in you, one said. So beautiful. Were you there when she said it? My mother stirred her tea. We watched from home. From home? But it was in Washington. That's only a few hours away. We couldn't get flights. Flights? One of them laughed. You can drive there. Your husband drives to New York for golf tournaments. The women exchanged glances that communicated volumes without words. My mother set down her teacup and left early. Victoria was quietly removed from the education nonprofit case the following Monday. It wasn't called punishment, but the client had specifically requested a different attorney. No one mentioned the social media post directly. They didn't have to. She'd learned something important that week. Reputation isn't just about winning cases. It's about who people believe you are when no one's watching. Actions have consequences. Sometimes they just take a while to arrive. 2 weeks after Washington, I agreed to have dinner at my parents' house. Not because I wanted to, but because I was finally ready. The house looked exactly the same as it always had. Same brick exterior, same manicured lawn, same seasonal wreath on the door. But when I walked through that front door, everything felt completely different. My family was already seated in the living room, my father in his armchair, my mother on the sofa. Victoria perched on the edge of a cushion like she might need to flee at any moment. No one stood to greet me. My father cleared his throat. We need to talk about what happened. I remained standing. What happened? I won an award. You didn't come. That's what happened. It's more complicated than that, he said. I kept my voice level. Because from where I'm standing, it's pretty simple. I invited you to the most important night of my career. You laughed at me and went to dinner instead. My mother twisted her hands. We didn't know it was such a big deal. I sent you the invitation, I said. It said national. It said Secretary of Education. It said C-SPAN broadcast. I looked at each of them in turn. Which part wasn't clear? Victoria stood abruptly. Fine. You want an apology? I'm sorry we didn't come to your ceremony. Happy now? No, Victoria, I don't want an apology. Then what do you want? I took a breath and steadied myself. I want you to understand something. For 32 years, I've tried to earn your respect, tried to make you proud, tried to prove that my choices were valid, even if they weren't the choices you would have made. I'm done trying. The room went silent. My hands trembled slightly, but I clasped them together to hide it. 32 years of wanting their approval didn't disappear overnight. Part of me still wanted my father to stand up and say he was proud. Part of me still wanted my mother to hug me and mean it. But I had learned something in Washington. Wanting something doesn't mean you need it to survive. What does that mean? My father's voice was sharp. It means things are going to change. You're overreacting, he said. We made a mistake. People make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. What you did was deliberate. You read my invitation. You saw exactly what it was. And you decided consciously that dinner with Victoria was more important. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. My mother's eyes welled up. Emily, please. You're hurting us. I'm hurting you? I almost laughed. Mom, you liked Victoria's rejection. You didn't say a word in my defense. You never do. I didn't mean it that way, she said. Then how did you mean it? She had no answer. Victoria crossed her arms. You're being incredibly dramatic about all this. One missed event and suddenly we're the villains. One event? I turned to face her. This isn't about one event, Victoria. This is about 32 years of being second, of being dismissed, of every achievement being minimized while yours were celebrated. You called my career lowly. You told your friends my award was meaningless. You posted fake congratulations on social media while screenshots of your real words were going viral. You couldn't even be honest about how little you think of me. Victoria's face flushed. For once, she had nothing to say. My father stood, trying to reclaim control. Enough. This is family business. We'll work it out privately, like adults. No. The word came out calm and certain. We won't work it out by pretending nothing happened. That's what we've always done. That's how we got here. Then what do you suggest? I looked at my father, the man who'd spent my entire life measuring my worth in dollars. "I suggest you start listening." I gathered my coat and purse. "Where are you going?" My mother's voice pitched higher. "We're not finished." "Yes, we are." I turned at the doorway. "I'm not cutting you out of my life, but I'm done being the family afterthought. The one who shows up no matter how I'm treated. The one who apologizes for taking up space." "Let me finish," I said. My voice carried a strength I didn't know I had. "From now on, I will attend family events when I'm treated with respect. I will answer calls when I feel like talking. I will visit when I'm actually welcome, not just tolerated." "So you're giving us rules now?" Victoria said. "I'm giving myself boundaries. There's a difference." "You can't just do this," my father said. His face was red. "We're your parents." "I can, and I am." I met his eyes. "You spent 32 years teaching me that my worth depended on your approval. It took me too long to learn you were wrong." My mother was crying now, real tears streaming down her face. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Old habits die hard. But another part, the part that had stood on that stage in Washington, that had heard Marcus describe how I'd changed his life, that had finally understood my own value, that part held firm. "If you want to be part of my life, you need to see me. Really see me. Not the daughter you wished I was, not the teacher you're embarrassed by. Me." I opened the front door. Cool autumn air rushed in. "I hope you can do that," I said quietly. "But if you can't, I'll survive. I've built a good life, a meaningful life, with or without your blessing." I stepped outside. The door closed softly behind me. I didn't look back. 6 months later, spring sunlight streamed through the windows of my new apartment, a 2-bedroom in a brownstone, twice the size of my old place. The award had come with prize money I hadn't expected, enough for a down payment on a real home. I stood in my kitchen preparing lesson plans, coffee steaming beside me. On the wall hung a framed photo from Washington with my grandmother, both of us crying and laughing at the same time. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Miss Carter, I matched pediatric surgery at Stanford. I nearly dropped my coffee." "Marcus, that's incredible. Congratulations." He replied, "I couldn't have done it without you. I wanted you to know before I posted anywhere." Outside my window, spring was awakening. Cherry blossoms, fresh starts, the cycle of renewal that teachers understand better than anyone. Every September brings a new beginning. Every class is a chance to change lives. I thought about that night in the restaurant when my father's face went white, when the phone calls flooded in, when they finally saw what I'd been all along. But here's what I learned. I didn't need that moment for myself. I already knew my worth. Sometimes the people we love most are the last to see us clearly. Sometimes they never do, and that has to be okay. My grandmother once told me that the best teachers don't teach subjects. They teach students. They see potential where others see problems. They plant seeds that bloom long after they're gone. I understood now. She'd been teaching me all along, not just how to be an educator, but how to be myself. And that in the end was the only lesson that mattered. Looking back, this journey taught me 3 things. First, your worth is not determined by the people who refuse to see it. Find those who do and hold them close. Second, walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the strongest thing you can do. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to healthier relationships. And third, the best revenge isn't dramatic. It's living well, authentically, and on your own terms.